Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, this is Archbishop Perez with a special message recognizing the incredible work of the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. In 2015, its founders were inspired by the World Meeting of Families and the visit of Pope Francis to create a pastoral ministry in Philadelphia for the benefit of families facing relationship crisis. The foundation ministers to struggling families and individuals through a confidential prayer line, pastoral appointment with priests, retreats, and much more. I'm deeply grateful for the work of the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. In a short time, it has already strengthened and sustained hundreds of families. For more information about this pastoral ministry, please visit the website on your screen and join me in praying for families throughout a local church. May God bless you abundantly.
Hello and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is Ann DeSantis, joined by my good friend here, Caroline Godin, for our 12 Ways to Heal from a Crisis. So I thank you so much, Caroline, for being a guest again, or I should say a host. And we have a really good topic for this one.
We do.
And we do. And before we start, just because Caroline is a little bit newer to our YouTube channel, although she and I have been doing podcasts for quite a while on our SoundCloud channel. So if you want to subscribe there, it's Philly Nonnatus on SoundCloud. And again, this is 12 Ways to Heal After a Crisis. And we're going to talk today on this episode about taking it one day at a time, living in the present moment, because when some kind of major crisis happens in your family, whatever that is, whether it's separation, divorce, illness, job loss, whatever, I mean, it could be anything, right? It comes as a shock, doesn't it? I mean, and as people of faith, sometimes it's hard to hold on to your faith when you've been hit with something that's just traumatizing. So, Caroline, I don't know, what would be sort of your take on this? I know both you and I have experienced those times in life. They don't happen all the time, right? But they do happen sometimes in family life. What's your take on this one?
Sure. There's so many things that we struggle with in the world. A lot of times it's financial. That's such a huge one, especially when it involves like a job loss or an unexpected pregnancy or house hunting, that it can really just throw us for a loop. We can get lost in the stress. And in getting lost in the stress, maybe it's not so much that we lose our faith in because of the trauma or tough times that we're experiencing, but maybe we just kind of forget about it because we're wrapped up in the shock or wrapped up in the stress and the worry, and we forget, oh yeah, I could turn to God. Wait a minute, God could help me take care of this. We kind of forget that, yeah, he created the universe. That's a pretty big deal. He can handle these little things and he can help us through these little things. But it's hard when he doesn't feel like a tangible person in front of us, to realize that, no, you can still go to him. You can still ask for his help. So yeah, these are things a lot of us struggle with on a regular basis.
Yeah, I agree. And looking back at my own life, I mean, I can think of some key things that have happened in my life, whether it was something to do with a health-related crisis, something to do with the kids, and even with parents. As we get older, our parents are starting to also, if your parents are alive, I mean, with ailing health and things like that, that can also be a crisis when not only are you parenting your own kids, but you're also worrying about your parents too.
Sandwich generation.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And our foundation, I mean, that's kind of what we're all about. We're all about, whatever that crisis is. I mean, because there's so many varied things, whether you're married, single, younger, older, is somewhere in the middle. We want to address all of those things that can happen. Now, I just pulled up this article. It's called Living Holy in the Present Moment. Now, this is something that I did not write, or neither did the foundation, but it's from a website called CatholicWoman.com. and it's by a woman by the name of Mercedes Shirts. So I want to make sure I give her credit for the article, and I'm not going to read through the entire thing, but one of the things that she says is that to lean into scripture as one way when you're going through some kind of like lambasting kind of like, what happened to me? Why is this
Mhm.
happening? You wake up in the morning and maybe you just found out that you have a health crisis or one of your kids. And she says the Lord doesn't make mistakes during times of doubt or uncertainty. Remember that scripture is layered with reminders that the Lord has intentionally placed us in each moment of our lives, and even the ones that are terrible that we just think to ourselves, I don't know why this happened to me. I mean, for my own life, I remember when I was diagnosed with a very serious health crisis. I've talked about this not only on this YouTube channel a little bit. I have my own YouTube channel too, and DeSantis, if you ever want to just check that out. But I was diagnosed with a serious heart problem after I had my second child. And that was a real health crisis. I'm happy to say that I have been healed of that illness. Everything is completely fine. I'm living a 100% healthy life, but I owe that to my Catholic faith and to prayer because I got the sacrament of the sick and it didn't work like a magic wand, but I was healed of that illness. And it's been 25 years now since I've been healed of it. But I can remember hearing those words that the disease that I had was something that had no cure. And it's something like you can't imagine the feelings that you get. And for people who are watching this podcast, our audience and people who might have gone through something, whatever that is, maybe it's something to do with a relationship or health or something to do with parents or your children.
Mhm.
It's hard, let's face it. I mean, it's a difficult thing, but I do think we need to lean on our faith, and as that article says, even go to Holy Scripture. But I think when it happens, we also need to go to a trusted friend or someone that that can help you through this. And I know for myself, when I went through that difficult time, the first person that I went to, of course, is my husband because, he's my soulmate, right? I mean, he is my husband. But I also went to trusted clergy that I felt could pray for us and pray for me. So I don't know if Caroline, you want to share that. Don't you think it's like you have to just go to where you're going to help get through the time of trauma, because that little time period, it might only be a few days when you first find out about something.
Mhm.
You need to do self care too, don't you? You
Absolutely.
need to
So,
sleep and take care of yourself. That's
yeah, we
incredibly
definitely
important.
do. With so we all have these coping mechanisms, and some people have, healthy coping mechanisms, and some people have unhealthy coping mechanisms, and we might cope in different ways. Some people might, go smoke a cigarette, or some people might go drown themselves in TV or something when they're stressed about things. There are people who decide to drink, and there are people who decide to sleep it off, and they just don't want to deal with life, and they fall into depression. But there's obviously healthy coping mechanisms as well. Some people they'll want to go running, or they'll want to exercise or do something like that. A great healthy coping mechanism is to just envelop yourself in prayer, envelop yourself in your faith. And then if you create a habit of doing that every day, you do a little bit more, you create a habit of, I'm going to wake up and say this prayer, and it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's not hurting me, and you just continuously wrap yourself around prayer, or you wrap yourself around another healthy habit. You start going to daily mass, if that's something you're able to do. Um, you create a habit that's good for your soul. And even if it doesn't feel like, as you said, it's not a magic wand. It isn't. It's not like poof, all better. I mean, miracles happen, and God bless you if that happened to you and you have that experience. That's so wonderful, and we celebrate that. But we can't expect it every single time. We can't expect that all of a sudden, poof, everything's better. Because even the long road, we know that it takes work, and
Yeah.
sometimes our crisis is a loss, and there's nothing we can do about it. And the only thing we can do is try to learn to live with it. and there's only so much healing that happens. But again, you envelop yourself in these good habits to replace what might be a bad vice, what might be an unhealthy thing to do.
That makes a lot of sense. And what just came to my head right toward the end of what you were saying is that, and I have heard this before, if you start to develop habits when life is good, right? You get up in the morning every day and you pray. Not everybody can make it to daily mass, but you say your prayers and you read a little scripture or the daily readings for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you take time throughout the day to slow down, right? And not be too wrapped up so that you can't be in the presence of God. And I think when a crisis does happen, because let's face it, every single person who's watching this podcast, and even people who aren't watching it, has had something and will have something happen, right? Now, you also brought up loss. That's another huge thing that happens to all of us, whether it be the loss of a grandparent, a parent, sometimes sadly, even a child. I know that within our foundation, we have had people recently reach out to us looking to find some healing from loss of a child. So difficult. I can't even imagine. But the bottom line, I guess, is what I'm getting at here is that with all of this, you said it is not a magic wand. It is not a once and done. Healing is something that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if any of you who are watching, though, if you've ever been involved in some kind of charismatic prayer or something, but with a charismatic prayer, sometimes it means that you have to trust God during that process. But remember that it's not something that is just going to be healed overnight.
Definitely.
It never really is.
And
So
it takes work on your part, which is hard because it's certainly not something you feel like doing. It's not something you might be motivated to do or have the energy to do because you're dealing with all the emotion. But you have to find that drive to say, okay, I want to be better. There are other people in my life that I need to be better for. And for my own self, I want to be better, so you have to do a little bit of work on your part. And even if that little bit of work is getting help from other people that will help you do that work, and always reach out, don't think, I'm not worth it, or, it's not a big deal. I can cope. I can deal with it. And you kind of press it down and try to stuff it in a box and pretend it doesn't exist. You have to take care of it because it will come back at you.
yeah, that's right. And I guess in relation to what you just said, what I was trying to communicate as well is that all prayer is good. Charismatic prayer is beautiful when you have people praying with you, praying over you. Sometimes I have had that experience in the past, and it's a wonderful thing. But I don't think we can think to ourselves in a mindset, and even with the sacrament of the sick, right? That you're going to be healed for sure of something physically, when we really have to just leave it to God and his timing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything takes time. Healing takes time. Healing is never a once and done, right? We need to be healed all the time, I think. If we're not healed of one thing, there's something else later on we need healing from. And that doesn't mean that you're a better or worse Catholic or Christian just because you are in a state of right now of feeling like everything is wonderful and life is better, because stuff happens and everybody's faith is tested. I don't care how much you pray, how much you go to church, how much you devote yourself to God. Everyone has moments of feeling some kind of test.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're watching this podcast right now and you're going through a challenging time, just remember that people like Caroline and I mean, maybe today's a great day for both of us. I don't know. For me, it's pretty good. But tomorrow could be another day of me being challenged where I'm going to say, oh my gosh, Lord, please help me with this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we're anybody's better than anybody else. It really doesn't. I wanted to read also what the article that I referred to, the one from CatholicWoman.com. She says, pray, pray, pray. She says, begin each day with a prayer of gratitude. Thank the Lord for the grace of each moment you will encounter throughout your day. Ask him to help you remember him as you navigate the day. And I think if you practice these things before some kind of adversity, then when it happens, you won't be in a state of shock and in a state of disarray. So I don't know. What do you think, Caroline?
There's an analogy that we use in my organization that I work for, First Responder Coaching. And we say it's the difference between the smoke detector and the sprinkler system. When a crisis happens, you need to already know how to handle it because you already have developed those strategies to prevent it. So a sprinkler system will go off when there's a fire, and it'll help. It's not necessarily going to save the house or save the building or whatnot. But better than that is the smoke detector, because the smoke detector will sense the smoke before the flames burst open the sprinkler system, right? Before it sets off. But even better than that are all the preventive measures to avoid that crisis, that fire, or that emergency. So we do these things. We want to build these habits so that when a crisis happens, and to add a statistic, 70% of Americans will experience trauma in their lives. 70%, that's a big percentage.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just will experience trauma. It doesn't mean one event of trauma. It could be multiple, depending on what's going on in your life and how things are going. But if we're that likely to experience something tragic or traumatic or, stressful, then we should be automatically giving ourselves the tools that we need to prepare and to be able to deal with it. We want to build resiliency in our faith and in our lives, mentally, emotionally, all of those things. We want to build resiliency so that when that happens, we're not just finding coping mechanisms, we're actually prepared. We already have a foundation of faith. We have a relationship with Jesus, and we can already turn to him, and we already are comfortable in our church and comfortable in our community, and we know who to turn to. So imagine if we have that now, and God forbid something happen. We don't want something to happen, but should it happen, we're prepared for it. And that's the mindset that we try to put forward.
I agree. And you and I have also done a lot of podcasts that has to do with parenting too.
Mm-hmm.
And I also invite, again, to people to go to that SoundCloud channel, Philly Nonnatus, and listen to some of those podcasts, especially if you're a parent of kids below the age of 18 or younger, because traumas can also happen to our kids. And when you're taking care of a child as a parent, or if you are parenting your own parent, I mean, that can happen too. If your parents are elderly and you feel like you've switched roles, we need to also be able to instill that in our kids, right? And that to help them get through the crisis of life so that they're prepared, right? I think sometimes as parents, when we don't, in some ways, not scare our kids, but prepare them that they need to be resilient through their faith, through their trust in God, but also through action, we are doing them a disservice if we do not teach them that life is not perfect, right? And I think all too often in our society today, both in the church and outside of the church, unfortunately, sadly, we see people instilling this in their kids and in their families. That whole idea of making your kid into the superstar that you are teaching. Yeah, you're laughing. You get it. You get what I'm saying. The whole idea of, you make it glamorizing our kids to go to the perfect colleges, to dress perfectly, perfect hairstyles, lots of friends, and eventually become rich.
Right.
When that's not what godly living is all about, right?
No.
It's about, number one, it is about our faith, right? You're listening to a podcast on the Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel. So obviously you care something about your faith, right? That's why you're watching this podcast. But I do think that we're doing our kids a disservice in not preparing them. What do you think about that topic? I know that's kind of like a side shoot of this discussion,
Yeah,
but
no,
I
no.
think it's along the same lines of preparing your kids that we're not living this glamorized life where you're headed toward this perfect adventure where all of your dreams come true.
Oh no, it's not. No,
It's
no prosperity
not the way life
gospel,
is. Right.
right? We don't
Exactly.
preach prosperity gospel because
Yes.
Jesus told us you will have trouble. He told us that. He said there's going to be trouble in the world. And it's like, hey, thanks for the warning. Now what? So our kids need to know that. And we can't rescue them from everything.
Mm-mm.
And that's the reality. I mean, I love my kids, and part of me wants to like make everything easy for them, but a large part of me does not want to make everything easy for, and my kids will tell you I don't make everything easy for them. I'm a little rocky when it comes to momming. I make them do the work as much as I can because I'm not always going to be there for them, and I want them to know how to do those things. And they are far more independent, bragging moment, far more independent than most of their friends, and emotionally more resilient. Um, I mean, there's waves, but I have two teenagers and a 6-year-old, so yeah, there's waves. But I really strongly believe that yes, we can celebrate who they are, absolutely. At the same time, not everybody gets a participation trophy. Sometimes you
Oh,
have
there
to
you
learn
go.
to lose.
Yeah.
Do it now. Learn to lose with grace.
Mm.
Well, I didn't
Because
win
it's
that
gonna
one.
happen. No, you're right. It's gonna
You know,
happen. You're not going to always have positive results with every relationship. Let's face it. All of us, I think, have had friendships that have gone sour in our lives, right?
yeah,
We
yeah.
all of us have relatives that we maybe don't have a perfect relationship with. All
Mhm.
of us have, jobs that didn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe it was our fault, maybe it wasn't.
Let's
So for
teach
that
them
reason,
to
teach them to be resilient, but through the grace of God, right? Keep
right,
holding
right.
on to your faith.
Let's teach them to take loss and disappointment now when their loss and disappointment is I didn't win my soccer game, or my friend moved away. Let's teach them to
Mm.
deal with that now before it turns into big adult problems. The bigger the person, the bigger the problems, right? Little
Mhm.
kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. Adults, we got problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we gotta start them learning those coping mechanisms, learning to turn to their faith, having that habit of saying their prayers before bed. And when they start to question things, because we live in this world and they will, teach them how to deal with those questions. Um, and this is big for me. My kids are going to question things. I watched it happen with family members. They questioned things, but they didn't question things till they were older, and then it just wasn't handled at a younger age. And I don't know, there were other influences, and they've turned away from the faith, and that's very sad to me. But for my children, they have questions. It's like, let's explore that. Let's go find the answers, because there are answers for all of the things about our faith. Go to catholicanswers.com.
Yeah, there you
That's a
go.
great
There's so
resource.
many great resources. You're right, because knowing our faith is a real gift. Knowledge really is power. And they
Mhm,
say that about education, but it really is about catechesis too, isn't it?
mhm.
It's both. And it doesn't mean that just because I'm well schooled in my faith, or Caroline might, she is too. It doesn't mean that when a crisis strikes that we might not be any stronger than you are that's watching this. We still might be like, "Oh my goodness,"
I
throw
got
my hands up.
questions.
Right, right. So we really want to encourage you. The topic of this podcast is um, that when a crisis strikes, to take one day at a time, live in the present moment. And what can you do when that happens? This whole series of 12 podcasts every last Thursday of every month at 8 o'clock. That's what it's meant to do. Now, we've also talked a lot about um, people who are like you, Caroline, who are those first responders. And I like at every podcast, I like you to talk about that, because first responders are people who not only help people who go through stuff and adversities and emergencies, but they themselves also do too. So tell us about the first responder coaching in case somebody's interested in that.
Sure. Yeah, our first responders are the ones that they show up on, our worst day or your worst day, and that's just every day for them. That's their job. So it's your police, your fire, your EMS, your dispatchers, and military. And those are the core first responder groups. We also include correctional officers in that, and then alongside first responders, you've got your emergency medical, like ER nurses and ER doctors and things like that. But the core first responders, they experience trauma every day because that is their day. Every call they go to is a part of trauma. It's related to trauma. I mean, they're not always rescuing kittens or showing up to direct traffic. They actually are dealing with real life situations that would be a really bad day for us, and it's just their job. So they're exposed to that on a regular basis. So to have a first responder that is rooted in his or her faith, that is, those are the first responders through life coaching. Those are the first responders that I can tell you are far more resilient to deal with all of that trauma and all of those things on a regular basis because they have a firm faith. They practice their faith. That I can't express how important that is. Having a firm faith, definitely important. Practice your faith. Practice it, practice it, practice it. And there's a reason it's called practice and not perfection. We're still learning.
I love that.
There's a reason we have a homily.
I've never
every
heard
Sunday.
that before. That's a good one. Yeah.
There's a reason there's a homily every Sunday. There's a teaching because we're still learning. We never stop learning. We never know as much about God as possible. No, not even close.
No, not even the most intelligent, well-scholared theologian in the world ever to exist. Still didn't figure it all out, right?
It's
And
practicing.
you can also be very schooled and knowledgeable, but not necessarily holy, by that, if that makes sense. So we have to put those two things together,
Don't
right?
be a
To be
Pharisee.
educated, but also holy. What is holy? I mean, holy is someone who loves God with all their heart, mind, and soul and really lives like Jesus, right? Really imitates and follows him. Not somebody who, goes around and looking at all the things that everyone else does and how the world should be, but doing nothing about themselves, right? That can happen a lot.
Right? You
It
remove
really
the
can.
splinter from their eye, but you don't notice the plank in your own.
Exactly. So that it can happen. So we want to offer encouragement to you who are watching this podcast. I just want to invite you that if you have never made an appointment with us, with a priest, if you want to speak to a priest, either online on like Google Meet or in a phone call, everything that we offer in that regard is free. We also offer the free spiritual direction. Send us a prayer intention. Just go to nonnatus.org and learn more about our mission. And I'm very grateful to Caroline because she's been like helping us out by co-hosting with me now for a couple of years. So
Yeah,
Caroline, thank you. Now tell them about your other endeavors as far as your websites and social media, because I'd love them to follow you because we're just so grateful to you and we want them to get to know you too.
Yeah, no, I'd love to share that. So I'm an author on Catholic 365, Epic Pew, and Catholic Mom. And I also am on Facebook, The Shepherd's Girl. And I'm on Instagram as well, although my daughter will tell you I'm not on Instagram quite as much as I should be. But yeah, so I post all of my articles and all of our SoundCloud shows and these shows I also post on The Shepherd's Girl on Facebook. So you can find me there. And then I'm also a catechist in my parish. So I always have a group of less than willing 10th graders for my confirmation class. And they're a little more willing by the end of the year. So I feel like I've done something. And then I'll be teaching my first grade class as well this year. And I'm also a martial artist. So if I'm not doing catechesis, I'm breaking boards or something.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good. And she's a busy mom with her 3 kids. And we're so grateful to you again. Now, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, Philly Nonnatus. If you click the little bell on YouTube, you get all notifications. So that means that when you watch the podcast next time, it'll notify you on your phone or on your laptop. A little notification will pop up that we're starting. So just remember, it's the last Thursday of every month at 8 p.m., 12 ways to heal from a crisis. Caroline, again, thank you so much for being my co-host.
I love it. It's great to be here.
See all of you next time. God bless.
See you.